Welcome to the Bookworm Duo, where we explore a variety of books. Today we discuss Rental House.
A popular new book by Weike Wang.
Right, the author of Joan is Okay. And,
Chemistry.
yes.
Mm.
So, we like to jump right in. In this deep dive, we're going to chronologically follow Carew and Nate.
Through the events of the book.
Yes. So, right from the start, we're in the winter, and Carew is already working on getting this rental house.
On Cape Cod.
Yeah, for the summer. And she's, talking to her friends, trying to figure out all the details.
The best beaches, that kind of thing.
Yeah, where to go, where not to go.
Where Obama gets ice cream.
Yeah, exactly, the important stuff.
The really important stuff.
But she's looking for a very specific kind of place, too.
A classic New England cottage.
Yeah. And it needs to have 2 bedrooms because they're having both sets of parents come visit.
That's right.
At different times. So, we already see that this is going to be a big part of the story. And then there's this little moment where Carew tells Nate, whatever you do, don't mention the dishwasher to my father. Right. Because there's a previous time when her father-in-law got really upset about the dishwasher, and he kind of implied that Nate was inept for using it and that maybe Carew wasn't a very good wife because she wasn't, doing the dishes herself.
Well, oh my God.
Yeah. So, it's just a little thing that shows that there are already some issues.
Some family dynamics.
Yeah. And now we fast forward to the day when Carew's parents are coming, and it is, intense.
Okay.
Carew is cleaning everything. I mean, she's relaundering the linens. She's, scrubbing every surface. And Nate, meanwhile, is eating a granola bar and opening a bottle of wine.
Oh, wow. Totally different approaches.
Yeah, completely different. He even takes their dog, Mantu, to the beach and lets her run off leash, even though there are signs that say dogs on leash at all times.
Oh.
Yeah. So, they're just dealing with this in different ways. Then the parents arrive. Well, first of all, they do this very quick inspection of the rental, looking for problems.
Like what?
Well, the driveway's too narrow. There's no garden hose in case of fire.
Hello?
Yeah, Carew's mother is, listing all the different ways a fire could start, lightning, forest fire, unwelcoming neighbors, gas leak.
Wow, prepared.
And their greeting for Nate is just a wave from, 6 feet away.
Ooh, chilly.
Yeah. Then Mantu, the dog, jumps up to greet Carrie's father.
I'm sure he loved that.
No, he was not happy. He insists that Mantu's paws have to be washed in Chinese.
This is like a cultural thing.
I guess so. And they have to do this whole ritual with lukewarm water and scrubbing each paw for 20 seconds. And then he shows them the dirty water, even though Carew and Nate had suggested just using wipes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you can already see that there are some differences in how they do things. Then they have lunch, cucumber salad, pork skewers.
Sounds delicious.
And then Carew helps her mother with the dishes, and her father starts talking to Nate. First, it's about fuel cells, which, okay.
Sure.
But then he's talking about his other daughter's son, who's becoming a welder. Then he asks Nate if he has any similar interests, which, is kind of like saying, do you have any practical skills?
Like he's trying to figure out if Nate is good with his hands.
Exactly. Especially because they know that Nate wasn't into school sports or anything.
Wow.
And then there's this flashback to Nate's own family and how they reacted when he told them he wasn't religious anymore. His mother was devastated. She kept asking him about Pascal's wagers.
Oh, that's...
Yeah, and his father was like, you're forgetting where you came from. And then his mother started crying. So, it was just really difficult. And because of that, Nate tends to let people assume that he's from a more, conventional background.
Conventional.
Yeah, like that he's an only child from a rich white family, just to avoid those conversations.
I can see why.
Then we have a flashback to how Carew and Nate met. It was at a Halloween party during Carew's senior year of college.
Cute.
Yeah, but she scared him when she first said boo to him. Then she said, some people are scared of me.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they sat down on the sofa, and then Carew starts throwing things across the room, like a coaster, then a pencil, then a notepad.
Yeah.
And the whole time, she's making direct eye contact with Nate.
That's bold.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. Then she tells him about how she wants to make her own money, separate from any family wealth.
Ambitious.
And she says, you with me, Nate the Great White.
So she's not afraid to be direct?
No, not at all. And when he asked if he'd see her again, she just said, maybe.
Maybe.
So, very mysterious.
Very mysterious.
Now we're back to the week with Carew's parents. And Nate's strategy seems to be silence and this kind of dopey expression.
The art of blending in.
Right. every morning they have this huge breakfast and they're expected to eat everything.
Hmm.
Karu tries to suggest some things to do, like go to the beach or see some lighthouses, even just driving by.
Hmm.
But her parents are not into it, and Karu just kind of accepts it like it's not even an option.
It's like she's already internalized their limitations.
Yeah. But Nate sees her differently. He even jokes that she should run for office.
That's sweet.
Yeah, he sees her potential.
He does.
And at breakfast, they talk about their careers, how Nate needs to get tenure and Karu needs to make partner.
Classic parental topics.
Yeah, and then they give them financial advice telling them to pay off their mortgage.
Of course.
And then, of course, the topic of children comes up.
Mm.
Karu's mother is very clear that her husband wants grandchildren,
Right.
but then she also says that they won't be providing childcare. And then Karu's father offers financial help, but Karu's mother immediately says no, like, this is America, you're supposed to be independent. And she actually points to Nate as an example of Western virtue.
Oh, the irony.
I know, right? It's just so awkward. And then Carrie's mother brings up this news story about a woman who was murdered in her apartment by a black man. And she keeps saying black over and over again. And she's saying that this could have been Karu.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's really disturbing because she's also made comments about Carrie's skin being too tan before.
Yikes.
So Nate tries to respond in his broken Chinese. He's trying to say that the guy was mentally ill, but he's avoiding saying black man. He might have even said something totally different by accident because his Chinese isn't that great.
That's tough.
Yeah. And Carrie's mother just glares at Karu and refuses to talk to Nate anymore. Her father just sighs. And then they end the conversation by talking about where they would live, if not New York. And Karu's mother says Minnesota, like very forcefully. Yeah, even though they don't really have any connections there. And it's even weirder because Karu's father had actually taken Nate on a tour of Minnesota before, like showing him all the different geographical areas.
It's like she's trying to send a message.
Yeah. And it's just really uncomfortable for everyone. So part 2 of the book starts, and it's Karu's parents last night in Chatham.
Okay.
And they're watching this real estate show about expats in Paris. And Karu and Nate start arguing about the difference between expat and immigrant, which is something they used to fight about a lot when they first started dating.
So it's like a recurring theme in their relationship.
Yeah, because Karu feels like expat implies a certain level of privilege and choice.
Right, like you're choosing to live somewhere else, not being forced to.
Exactly. But Karu's father is totally focused on the numbers, like how much the apartments cost and how big they are.
Practical.
Yeah. And Karu's mother is making comments about how she doesn't think French people like Asians.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, I know. And Carrie's like, that's not true. They love Asian luxury goods.
Well, she's got a point.
Yeah. But then they get into this whole argument about city versus countryside and interior design.
Classic arguments.
Meanwhile, Karu's father is still doing all these calculations in his head about the value of the properties. Nate remembers how this used to embarrass Karu, but now she kind of appreciates it, like it's a form of mental training. He even remembers a time when they were waiting for her parents outside a grocery store and they were arguing about how many gumballs were in a machine.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're just very intense about everything. Finally, the parents leave, and Nate says, "You didn't even cry."
And what does she say?
Well, she explains that she never cries in front of them. She remembers a time when they went to visit Nate's family in Ohio, and she only cried after they left. And she describes it as having her core being excavated, like she feels completely drained after they leave.
That's a powerful image.
Yeah, it is. And she talks about how they were her only guardians and how they all had a difficult childhood, and she wonders if they'll ever be able to make happy memories together. It's like they're all kind of stuck in this cycle of unhappiness.
Right.
Then there's another flashback, this time to Nate's law school graduation. His mom is super excited, of course, but his dad can't find a parking space, so he's driving around for like 2 hours. And Karu's mom has a migraine and stays at the hotel, probably because she's not comfortable with all the other families. Yeah. And Karu is having her own issues with feeling insecure about her achievement.
And graduation is always such a mixed bag of emotions.
Yeah, totally. Now, before Nate's parents arrive for their visit, Nate decides to wash all the bed sheets.
Really?
Yeah, he's saying he feels like they're running a hotel. They talk about how it could be worse, like what if they had divorced and remarried parents?
No, that's true.
And later, Karu finds Nate asleep face down on the bed with Mantu next to him.
Oh.
Yeah, but she notices that Mantu seems to prefer Nate to everyone else. Yeah, it's like her order of preference is Nate, then Karu's father, then a toy, and then Karu.
Oh, no.
Carrie even jokes about getting another dog just to see where she would fit in.
That's funny.
And then Carrie starts thinking about how she travels a lot for work and how Mantu probably forgets about her when she's gone.
Right.
It's kind of sad. But then we learn that Nate has all this Mantu merchandise.
Mantu merchandise.
Yeah, like T-shirts and mugs and stuff.
Yeah.
And he takes Mantu to work with him a lot.
Oh, that's kind of adorable.
It is. And then they start talking about having kids, and Nate's like, have you seen the movie Idiocracy?
Oh, no.
Yeah, he's not into it. He also talks about, like, Darwinian fitness and stuff, which is just depressing.
Heavy topics.
Yeah. And Karu says, don't you dare die before me.
I mean, fair?
Yeah, but apparently they have these kinds of conversations all the time during their morning dog walks in Central Park.
Wow. Deep thoughts in Central Park.
So now Nate's parents arrive, and they immediately want to go to Wellfleet for oysters. Yeah, Nate's mom has done all this research on Yelp and everything. Of course she has. And they decide not to wear masks, even though it's, recommended.
Bold move.
Yeah. And Nate's mom is just amazing at, charming people.
Really?
Yeah, they get a table at this totally full restaurant just because she mentions that they're from North Carolina.
Wow.
I know, Karu is, totally impressed.
I bet.
But then Karu says she has a stomach ache so she doesn't have to eat the oysters.
Smart move.
Yeah, and Nate's dad starts teasing his wife about how she told Faye that she'd had oysters.
Faye.
Oh, yeah, that's Nate's other brother. Anyway, Nate's parents are dickering about everything. You know how Manhattan is so much more sophisticated than their town, and who's a better driver?
Sounds familiar.
Karu orders clam chowder, but it looks terrible. And Nate's parents are being super nice to Nate, which is just kind of weird.
Maybe they're just trying to be welcoming.
Yeah, but it feels fake.
Right.
And Karu is like, do all white families act like this in public?
That's a good question.
And then, of course, Nate's dad starts talking about how Nate's always loved school, and Nate's mom is exaggerating about how he could read when he was 3 years old. And Karu is just trying to keep up with all the pleasantries, but she's worried about, perpetuating stereotypes.
It's tough being the outsider.
Then there's a flashback to a previous visit where Nate's mom brought out all of Nate's childhood drawings, and she was explaining them to Karu, and Karu laughed.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and Nate's mom got really upset and accused Karu of being jealous.
Seriously.
Yeah, it was really awkward.
Wow.
So then we get another flashback, and this time it's Karu thinking about being a daughter-in-law for 3 years. She says she prefers the Chinese term wife of son. And we learned about how after Nate went to college, his mom started needing more attention, so she was calling her sister more and offering to have her mother-in-law move in.
Oh, wow.
And she kind of fixated on her husband's supposed drinking problem.
So there's some family drama there.
Yeah, definitely. And then before this current visit, Carrie's mom gave her all sorts of advice, like don't be snarky and don't irritate his mother.
Solid advice.
And she reminded Carew that Nate was raised well.
I mean, he seems like a good guy.
He is. And Nate asked Carew not to mention that her family was involved with the Communist Party in China.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a sensitive topic. But anyway, Carew agrees that Nate is well loved, but she says that pleasing his parents is difficult.
I can imagine.
Now, Nate's mom has this whole list of lighthouses that she wants to see, 5 of them?
5.
Yeah, and they're all spread out, so it's going to be a really long day. Nate tries to tell her that it's not realistic, but she insists, and she says that Nate's dad can drive.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, and Nate's like, but I don't like it when he drives.
Does he have a bad driving record or something?
No, it's just a control thing, I think. And they get into this huge fight about family time and communication, so they end up driving to Chatham Lighthouse in separate cars. Yeah. And Jade's mom is not even impressed. She's like, it's okay, but it wasn't on her list.
So demanding.
I know. And Carrie's struggling to control Mantu because she's excited, and Nate ends up being the tour guide, even though he didn't want to go in the first place.
Poor Nate.
Yeah. And while they're at the lighthouse, Carrie's watching all these other couples, and she's thinking, maybe I should have married someone more like me.
I wonder if she really means that.
Maybe. And then there's this whole flashback to her dating life at Yale.
Oh, tell me more.
Okay, so there was Peter, who was pre-med and not interested in her.
Okay.
And Shang, who was obsessed with money and ended up cheating on her.
What a great track record.
No. And then there was James, who was president of the Taiwanese Student Association, and he actually broke up with her because his mother didn't approve of her being mainland Chinese.
Wow.
Yeah. And Carrie talks about how there's this weird lack of unity within the Asian community.
Right. It's not a monolith.
No, definitely not. Anyway, after James, Carrie just gave up on dating for a while.
Understandable.
And her mom actually asked her if she was gay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So then it's her last Halloween at Yale, and she's at this random party, and she sees Nate, who's wearing a shark fin.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah. And she decides to go talk to him.
Good for her.
And then we're back at the beach with Nate's parents. And Nate's mom is going on and on about how cute kids are.
Ugh, I can't stand it when people do that.
Karu doesn't like it either. And then she starts telling these stories about Ethan's tantrums when he was little. And Karu's thinking about how Nate barely ever calls home.
Interesting.
And then Nate's mom actually says, well, Karu probably knows you better than I do now.
Wow, self-aware.
I know, right? It's kind of surprising. And then on the drive back from the beach, Nate's mom is convinced that this woman was lurking around, like staring at Karu. And she wants to report it or something.
Seriously.
Yeah, she's really upset. And Karu doesn't tell her about a previous incident where someone threw a rock at her because she doesn't want to deal with the drama.
Good call.
Yeah. But Nate tries to tell his mom that it's fine, but she's not having it. So when they get back to the cottage, Carrie just hides in the bedroom and texts her mom, telling her that everything's fine. And she's thinking about how at least the woman wasn't outwardly racist.
That's a low bar.
Yeah, it is. So now Carrie's in her head thinking about all this stuff, and she can hear the family outside, and Mantu's playing fetch. And the next day, Karu decides not to go to the farmer's market with everyone else.
Okay.
And Nate's mom is all over her, like super affectionate.
Interesting.
Yeah. Then Nate and his dad go outside to build a fire.
Build a fire?
Yeah. It's like this whole thing. They have a very specific way of doing it. Earlier, Karu had said that she wanted to go home and have a drink.
I don't blame her.
Yeah. But Nate was like, do more days.
Yeah.
And now Nate's mom is offering Karu a hard seltzer.
Trying to win her over with alcohol.
Maybe. So they're all sitting around this fire eating with plastic utensils, and Nate's mom is talking about how they should rent a place with a bigger outdoor space next time.
Of course she is.
Yeah, she wants a swimming pool and a pizza oven and all this stuff. And then the conversation turns to money, which is clearly something that makes Nate's parents uncomfortable.
Right.
It's not really clear what their financial situation is. But then we have this flashback to before Karu and Nate got married, and Karu's dad is asking Nate about his debts.
Oh, that's always fun.
Yeah, not really. And Nate doesn't even know how much he owes in student loans.
Yikes.
Yeah, so Karu has to call Nate's mom, who can't find the paperwork. So Karu ends up calling the loan company herself.
She's taking charge.
She is. So back at the fire pit, Nate's mom is complaining about how they never call her and her husband.
Oh, brother.
Yeah. And she's saying that Ethan calls all the time, which is kind of a dig at Nate.
That's subtle.
And Nate's like, Ethan only calls when he needs something. And they get into this big fight.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and Nate refuses to apologize for what he said about Ethan. And his mom says, think about what I said, which is just the worst thing to say.
It is.
Because it's like, she expects him to just understand her without her having to explain anything. So Karu goes inside because she can't deal with it anymore.
Smart move.
Yeah. But then Nate's mom follows her and tries to explain that she wasn't actually talking about Karu, but about Nate having a harder life than Karu's father.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, and her father-in-law is like, no, we don't mean it like that, but it's just super awkward. And then Nate's mom offers her some fruit.
The classic peace offering.
Yeah, but it doesn't really fix anything. And later that night, one of the burning logs from the fire pit falls into the house.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and Mantu freaks out and tries to attack it. Someone screams.
I bet.
And Nate's dad manages to put out the fire, but they've broken the screen door. And they're all just standing there staring at Karu.
Oh, no.
But Karu's strangely calm. The fire alarm is going off, and she knows they're going to lose their security deposit, and she's going to get a bad review. But she just takes a deep breath and says, come on, chosen family, let's go outside.
Chosen family.
Yeah, and they all go outside. Okay.
So now, Karu and Nate are back in New York, and they're planning a 2-week vacation.
Vacation after vacation.
Well, Nate wants to have a second honeymoon, like a chance to reconnect.
That's sweet.
But Karu's not really into it. They even talk about Rubens' vase.
Rubens' face.
Yeah, it's that optical illusion where you can see either a vase or two faces, and they're talking about how it's like their marriage, how they see things differently.
Deep.
Yeah. And Nate wanted to go camping.
Camping?
Yeah, but Karu wanted a bungalow, and Nate was thinking of, like, a rustic cabin.
Okay.
But Karu booked this whole gated vacation complex in the Catskills.
See, fancy.
Yeah, and Nate's disappointed.
I can imagine.
And when they're packing, Karu's organizing everything perfectly. Like, she has color-coded packing cubes, and Nate's trying to unpack them, and he's just like, giving up.
So organized.
Yeah. And Nate cooks chicken and rice, and they eat on the deck with Mantu, who's on medication.
Medication for what?
Oh, she has some anxiety issues.
Mantu. I know. So Nate's complaining about how he wishes there was no wifey.
Does he want to disconnect?
Yeah. But Karu's like, just don't use it then. And they start arguing about their vacation spot again.
Oh, no, not again.
Yeah, Nate's like, I hate this gated community. We should have gone to the Hamptons. But Kara's like, you've never even been to the Hamptons. How do you know you'd like it?
Fair point.
And then they're arguing about, like, comfort versus what other people will think.
That's always a fun argument.
Yeah. And then their neighbors come over to introduce themselves.
Oh.
Yeah. Their names are Elena and Mircea. They live in Park Slope, but they're originally from Romania and Rotterdam.
Wow. International.
Yeah. And Nate immediately tells them their zip code.
Why?
I don't know. Maybe he's trying to impress them. And they mention getting brunch together in Manhattan sometime.
Okay.
And then we find out that they have a 6-year-old son named Luca.
A kid.
Yeah. And he speaks 3 languages: Romanian, English, and some Dutch.
Wow, impressive.
I know. And they talk about how they go to birthday parties every weekend and how they're eventually going to move back to Rotterdam.
Interesting.
Yeah. And Mircea works at the Fed, and Elena is an artist with a home studio. So they seem like really cool.
Yeah, they do.
Anyway, they invite Karu and Nate to go hiking with them after they take a nap.
Okay.
But Karu's like, maybe. And Nate makes this really awkward joke about joining them for either the nap or the hike.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it doesn't go over well. And Kara's thinking about how she wishes they were more like Elena and Mircea.
Really?
Yeah, she thinks their life seems so easy.
The grass is always greener.
Yeah. And then Karu and Nate are talking about their neighbors, and Karu says they should hang out with them more to make their vacation more fun.
Okay.
But Nate wants to stay in. And they get into another argument about Nate calling the complex a compound and how they should be spending time together. And Nate's like, am I not enough for you? Yeah, it's kind of intense. And Karu ends up reading a book while Nate scrolls through his phone. And then he calls his mom.
Of course he does.
Yeah, and his mom is confused about the whole fancy bungalow thing, and she's worried about the economy, and she says they should have invited Ethan.
Ethan?
Yeah, Nate's brother. And Nate tells her about their neighbors, but he gets Mircea's name wrong and mixes up where they're from, and his mom is like, how can people be from so many places?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a little sad. And then we get this glimpse into Nate's head, and he's feeling really inferior to Karu, but he can't admit it.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He remembers going to the doctor because he was having anxiety attacks. But he didn't tell the doctor about his feelings, just about the physical symptoms. And the doctor gave him a prescription for Xanax, but he never filled it. And the doctor told him to exercise more.
Standard advice.
Yeah. And then he starts thinking about his dad dying and how stressful it was to deal with the funeral arrangements with Ethan and his mom.
That's a lot to process.
Yeah. And then Mircea shows up and invites himself and Elena on their planned trip to the alpaca farm.
Oh, no, he didn't?
Yeah, he did. And he makes this weird joke about romance.
Yeah.
So they all go to the alpaca farm, but they drive separately.
Right.
And Mircea is bragging about how far his Tesla can go on a single charge.
Of course he is.
And at the farm, they learn about the difference between alpacas and llamas.
Unobsessional.
Yeah, yes. And while Karu and Mircea are buying tickets, Elena is outside with Nate, and she compliments him on his shirt and then fixes his collar.
Like a mom.
Yeah. And she starts talking about how Luca speaks 3 languages.
That kid again.
And she corrects Nate about something he said about the languages Luca speaks.
Okay.
And Nate admits that he doesn't actually speak Chinese.
Wow.
Yeah, which is kind of a big deal considering he's married to Karu.
Right.
And Mircea is watching them from a distance, and he's making comments to Elena about how practical she is. And then he goes over and talks to Nate, asking him about their daily routine and how they keep things fresh in their relationship.
Nosy much.
Yeah, a little bit. And Nate's answers are pretty boring, like they work and hang out with each other and take care of their dog.
The joys of married life.
And Mircea is like really surprised by that. And then he asks Nate about his background and where he's from.
Okay.
And then he starts asking all these questions about freedom and telling Nate that he should live somewhere else to get a different perspective. And he's like opening his arms wide.
Dramatic.
Yeah, it's a little much. And Nate just crosses his arms.
That's me. I hate small talk and philosophical debates.
Yeah. And then Mircea says, don't get stuck in one way.